I always believed that wedding vows were more than just pretty words spoken at the altar. For better or for worse, in sickness and in health. For me, that was an absolute law. But I could never have imagined that my devotion to those words would turn my life into a living hell, orchestrated by the man I loved more than anything else in the world. My name is Emma, and for the past 3 years I have been living in a nightmare that I thought was our shared tragedy. It all started on the day when William, my husband, came home with a gray face and trembling hands. He told me that his business had gone bankrupt, completely, that we had lost everything, investments, savings, plans for the future. Everything had supposedly disappeared overnight because of a failed deal and a lawsuit. I remember hugging him then, feeling his tears wet my shirt. I stroked his back and whispered that we would get through it, that money wasn't important as long as we had each other. How naive I was. From that moment on, our life changed dramatically. William fell into a deep depression. He lay on the sofa all day, staring at the ceiling, or slept 16 hours a day. He said he couldn't look people in the eye, that he was a failure who had let his family down. His psychotherapist, on whom we spent our last pennies, told me that William needed time and support, and I gave him that support. I took on absolutely everything. I got a second job and then a third. In the mornings, I worked as a barista. In the afternoons, I sat in an office in an administrative position. And in the evenings and on weekends, I cleaned other people's houses or delivered food. I slept 4 hours a day. My hands were rough from the chemicals. I had permanent dark circles under my eyes, and my back hurt so much that sometimes I couldn't straighten up. But I didn't complain. I did it for us, for William. Our life turned into survival in the jungle of the metropolis. We sold our spacious house and moved into a tiny, musty flat in a rough neighborhood where it was scary to go out at night because of the constant shouting and sirens. We sold both cars. I took the bus or walked to save a few quid on transport, even in the rain and snow. Food became a luxury for us. I learned to cook 10 different dishes from rice and beans. We only ate meat on major holidays, and even then, it was the cheapest chicken on sale. I stopped buying clothes and cosmetics for myself, and cut my own hair in front of the bathroom mirror. Every extra penny went towards paying off the debts that, according to William, were suffocating us. He showed me some Excel spreadsheets, graphs with red lines, saying that if we didn't pay the bake this month, we would be sued. The worst thing was seeing his condition. William hardly ate, wore the same stretched-out t-shirt, and constantly talked about how worthless he was. Sometimes I would find him crying in the kitchen in the dark. At times like that, my heart would break. I felt guilty that I couldn't earn more, that I couldn't get us out of this hole faster. I denied myself everything, even necessary dental treatment, just to pay his bills and buy him quality vitamins, which I hoped would help him out of his depression. 3 years. For 3 long years, I worked myself to exhaustion, turning from a vibrant woman into an emaciated shadow. I lost touch with my friends because I was ashamed to admit that I didn't even have enough money for a cup of coffee at a cafe. My world narrowed to work, debts, and caring for my husband, who lay on the sofa. I believed it was temporary. I believed we were a team. I didn't know I was playing a game whose rules were known only to one person, and that person was my husband. Everything changed last Tuesday. It was a normal, gray day. I took a day off from one of my jobs because I was physically unable to get out of bed due to a migraine. William went for a walk. He started leaving the house a couple of months ago, saying that doctors had recommended fresh air to combat his depression. I was lying in silence, trying to calm the throbbing pain in my temples, when the landline rang. We hadn't disconnected it, only because it was part of a cheap internet package. I picked up the receiver, expecting to hear another debt collector or telemarketer. The woman's voice on the other end of the line sounded formal and polite. She introduced herself as a security officer for a large national bank, a bank where, as I knew, we had no accounts since we were supposedly bankrupt with a ruined credit history. She asked for William. I replied that he wasn't there and that I was his wife, Emma. The woman hesitated, but then said she was calling about suspicious activity on the Platinum Premium account. I almost laughed through my tears of pain. What Platinum? We had $12 left on our debit card until the end of the week. I told her it must be a mistake or fraud and that my husband didn't have any premium accounts. But she insisted. She gave me the last 4 digits of William's social security number and our old address. Everything matched. At that moment, something inside me clicked. My intuition, which had been dormant for 3 years, suddenly woke up and sounded the alarm. I asked what transaction she was referring to. The employee replied that there had been an attempt to purchase $5,000 worth of jewelry at a boutique in the city center, and the bank had blocked it as unusual, as card spending usually occurs in another state. $5,000, jewelry, in another state? My brain refused to process this information. I hung up the phone, feeling cold sweat running down my back. The migraine disappeared, giving way to panic and a strange, cold calm. $5,000. That was more than I'd earned in 2 months, working 3 jobs. It was money we shouldn't have had. My first thought was that William had gotten into new debt, taken out a loan in someone else's name, or gotten involved with criminals. But the phrase, Platinum Premium account, kept running through my head. They don't open accounts like that for bankrupt people. I rushed to William's old laptop, which was gathering dust in the corner. He rarely used it in front of me, preferring his phone. I opened it. Password. Of course, there was a password, but I had known William for 10 years. I knew his habits. I tried our wedding date. No. The name of his first dog. No. Then I entered his mother's date of death, backwards. The system logged in. My hands were shaking when I opened the browser history. It was clean. Too clean. He had deleted the history, but he had forgotten about the autofill logins. I went to the website of that very bank. The login field already had a username I had never seen before. The password was hidden by dots. I clicked Show Password in the browser settings. It was the name of the street where we spent our honeymoon, plus the year. I clicked Login. What I saw on the screen made me forget how to breathe. It wasn't just an account. It was an entire financial empire in miniature. Several savings accounts, an investment portfolio, a current account. The total balance. I looked at those numbers and couldn't believe my eyes. I counted the zeros, again. And again. There was over $800,000. $800,000. Meanwhile, I was taping my only pair of winter boots with duct tape. I sat in front of the screen, feeling like the world around me was falling apart. It didn't feel like relief that we had money. It felt like a physical blow to the gut. 3 years. For 3 years, I ate plain rice. For 3 years, I cried into my pillow out of helplessness. For 3 years, I watched my husband suffer while he sat on a bag of gold. But the worst came to light when I started looking through the transaction statements. While I was washing floors in other people's homes, William was living the high life. The transactions showed regular payments at expensive restaurants, spas, and electronic stores, video game purchases worth hundreds of dollars, luxury car rentals for weekends when he supposedly went to his mother's to help with the garden, subscriptions to elite streaming services, donations to streamers. He wasn't just hiding money. He was spending it on himself, while I was fading away, providing for his basic needs. I found transfers to another account labeled Studio Rent. It turned out he was renting a small flat in the city center, a place where he probably spent his time while I thought he was walking in the park or hanging out with friends. It was his personal paradise, a refuge from the miserable life he had created for me. I scrolled down the page, and every line was like a stab in the heart. Date, 12 March. That was when I sold my engagement ring, the only valuable thing I had left, to pay for his urgent medical tests. On the same day, 12 March, $400 was debited from his account at a steakhouse. He was celebrating. While I was sobbing at the pawn shop, giving away the symbol of our love for pennies, he was eating steak and drinking expensive wine. I started to feel sick. Physically sick from such a betrayal. At that moment, I realized that his depression was an act, a brilliant performance worthy of an Oscar. All those sighs, lying face to the wall, tears about his own worthlessness. It was all manipulation to make me work without asking unnecessary questions. He turned me into a slave, a source of free labor, testing how far I was willing to go for him. It was some kind of sick social experiment, or a manifestation of extreme narcissism. I quickly took out my phone and started taking pictures of the screen. Every page, every statement, every bill. Downloaded all the PDF files onto a USB stick I found in a drawer and sent copies to myself on a secret email. Address he didn't know about. I needed proof. Ironclad proof. I knew that if I just showed it to him now, he would wriggle out of it. He would say that it wasn't his money, that he was keeping it for a friend, or come up with some other lie. I heard the key turn in the front door lock. William was back. I slammed the laptop shut, wiped my fingerprints off the keyboard with the hem of my robe, and rushed to the kitchen. My heart was beating so loudly that I thought he would hear it from the hallway. I poured a glass of water and tried to steady my breathing. "Emma, I'm home." His voice sounded tired and weak, as usual. "The walk has completely exhausted me. My legs are giving way. Is there anything to eat?" I turned around. He was standing in the hallway, slumped over, with that same martyr's expression on his face that I had pitied for 3 years. Now I could see the well-fed, satisfied predator behind that mask. I noticed a tiny stain on his jacket, like sauce from an expensive burger. Before, I wouldn't have paid any attention to it. Now I saw everything. "Just rice, darling," I said. My voice didn't even waver. "We only have rice left." The next 3 days were the most difficult of my life. I had to play the role of a loving, caring, exhausted wife, knowing that I was sleeping in the same bed with a monster. Every touch of his made me feel disgusted. When he complained about his headache or how hard it was to be an unemployed man, I wanted to scream the truth in his face. But I kept quiet. I was hatching a plan. I found a divorce solicitor who agreed to a free initial consultation. I took a day off work under the pretext of a doctor's appointment and drove to the office on the other side of town. When I showed the solicitor the printouts of the bills, his eyebrows shot up. He asked me where we got the money from if we were officially almost bankrupt. I explained the situation. The solicitor said it was a classic case of asset concealment and financial abuse. Our state has a community property law. This meant that everything he earned or accumulated during the marriage belonged to both of us, 50-50, even if the account was in his name. Moreover, given that he had hidden these funds while I was supporting him, the court could award me the majority as compensation. But the solicitor warned me that I needed to proceed with caution. If William suspected that I knew, he might try to transfer the money offshore or cash it out and hide it. I had to make him feel secure for a couple more weeks, while the lawyers prepared an order to freeze his accounts. I returned home, buying the cheapest instant noodles on the way. In the evening, as we were having dinner, William started his old song again. "Emma, I think we need to sell your sewing machine," he said, poking at his plate with his fork. "We can't afford to pay the electricity bill next month." My sewing machine was a reminder of my grandmother. It was the last thing that brought me joy. "Of course, William," I replied, looking him straight in the eye. "Whatever the family needs." That moment with the machine was the last straw. He didn't just want to save money. He enjoyed the process of depriving me of everything I held dear. He wanted to break me completely so that I would depend only on him, even in my poverty. It was power. Pure distilled power. I realized I couldn't wait 2 weeks. The risk that I would snap and kill him in his sleep was becoming too great. I remembered the suspicious transaction with the jeweler. The bank had blocked the card, but he had other accounts. I decided to go for broke. I knew the answers to the security questions. I knew his details. At night, when he fell asleep after taking his sleeping pills, which I'm sure were just vitamins, I opened his laptop again. I didn't transfer the money to my account. That would have been too obvious and easy to trace as theft. Instead, I did something else. I went to the tax office website. I knew that those $800,000 were gray. He hadn't paid taxes on them for years, hiding his income from everyone, including the state. In America, the IRS is no joke. I filled out the whistleblower form, attaching all the statements and account numbers. Then, I contacted his bank via online chat support, pretending to be him. I reported the card lost and asked them to freeze all accounts until I could visit the branch in person with my passport. This would give me a few days head start while he dealt with the bureaucracy. He wouldn't be able to withdraw a penny. In the morning, I packed my things. There wasn't much, just one suitcase. I took my sewing machine. I left a printed statement from his account on the table, where I circled the amount of $800,000 and the transaction from the steakhouse on the day my ring was sold. I put a note next to it. It had only 3 words. Game over, William. I left at dawn while he was still asleep. I moved into a cheap motel, paying for it with a credit card I had secretly applied for a week earlier. The feeling of freedom I experienced when I left that stuffy stairwell was intoxicating. The air seemed sweeter, the colors brighter. I was no longer a victim. I was a hunter who had just snapped the trap shut. Around noon, my phone started ringing off the hook. Dozens of calls from William. Messages. At first, they were plaintive. Emma, where are you? What's going on? Then they turned panicked. The cards aren't working. The bank has blocked access. And finally, I saw his true colors in the texts. You pathetic bitch. What have you done? Come back and fix this immediately. You don't know who you're messing with. I didn't respond. I sat in my motel room, drinking real Starbucks coffee, which I had bought for the first time in 3 years, and reading a book. I turned off notifications but saved every message for my solicitor. Every insult, every threat only confirmed that I was right and strengthened my position in court. He threatened me with the police, accused me of theft and blackmail. It was ridiculous to hear accusations of theft from a man who had stolen 3 years of my life. By evening, the tone of his messages had changed again. He began to beg, Emma, I'm sorry. It was a misunderstanding. This money is a surprise for us. I wanted to give you an anniversary present. I was saving it for our future home. Please come back. Let's talk. This lie was so pathetic that I even felt a little sorry for him. Did he really think I was that stupid? After the stakes, renting a secret apartment and selling my ring? Surprise? Yeah, right. The next day, I met with a solicitor to officially file for divorce. We attached all correspondence, financial documents, and evidence of his threats to the case. When William received the divorce notice and court summons, he tried to break into my workplace. Security escorted him out, but I saw his eyes. There was no remorse in them. They held the rage of a child whose toy had been taken away. He shouted that I was nothing, that I would be lost without him, that I should be grateful to him for even living with me. The most interesting part began when the Internal Revenue Service, IRS, got involved. My anonymous tip had worked. It turned out that he had received money from the sale of a stake in a business, which he had forgotten to mention in his bankruptcy filing, plus some cryptocurrency fraud. His assets were frozen by the feds. Now he wasn't just fighting me for the division of property. He was fighting for his freedom, trying to avoid prison for tax evasion and fraud. The divorce process was messy. He tried to hide the remaining funds and retroactively transfer property to relatives, but my lawyer was a shark. 6 months have passed. The divorce is officially finalized. The court awarded me 60% of all assets found as compensation for moral damage and financial abuse, and also ordered him to cover all my legal costs. The rest of his money went to pay off huge fines to the tax authorities. In essence, he was left with practically nothing. Ironically, he is now truly bankrupt, and this time it is not a game. I learned that he now lives in the same tiny flat where we live together because he cannot afford anything better. He works as a courier, delivering food. Sometimes I wonder if he orders rice and beans. His friends turned their backs on him when they found out the truth. His parents tried to call me and shame me for ruining their boy's life, but I just blocked their numbers. I no longer accept this toxic garbage into my life. I bought myself a small, cozy house with a garden. I have a new car. I regained my health, started going to yoga and seeing a psychologist to work through the trauma of that relationship. But most importantly, I regained my self-respect. I look in the mirror and see a strong woman who went through hell and came out the winner. I no longer skimp on food. And I bought back my wedding ring from the pawn shop. Not to wear, but to melt it down into a beautiful phoenix-shaped pendant. A symbol of my rebirth. I recently ran into a mutual acquaintance. He told me that William is telling everyone the story of how his greedy wife robbed him blind as soon as he fell ill. He still doesn't get it. He still believes his own lies. But that's not my problem anymore. His reality is now limited to the walls of his current pennilessness. Looking back, I ask myself, how could I have been so blind? Love makes us wear rose-colored glasses, but my devotion was used against me as a weapon. I spent 3 years of my life saving a man who was drowning me at the time. But I don't regret what happened. This experience taught me the most important lesson. Trust, but verify. And never, ever sacrifice yourself for someone who is not willing to sacrifice even their comfort for you. Now I am happy. I am breathing freely. I know the value of money, but I know the value of honesty, even better. My story is a warning to anyone who blindly dissolves into their partner. Financial infidelity is as destructive as physical infidelity, and sometimes worse, because it robs you of your future and basic security. What do you think? Was I right to report him to the tax authorities and take most of the money? Or should I have just left him with his millions on his conscience? Was my revenge too cruel? Or did he get exactly what he deserved? Write your opinion in the comments. It's really important for me to know what you think. If this story made your heart beat faster, and you want to hear more real stories about human relationships, betrayal, and karma, be sure to subscribe to the channel and click on the bell. There are many more exciting stories ahead. Take care of yourself and your loved ones, and may your loyalty always be mutual.